Hi everyone. This presentation is designed to talk a little bit about why you may be feeling the way you do right now. As we go through this completely unprecedented, at least in modern times, pandemic, I know a lot of us have been feeling things that are all over the map, and we're dealing with an awful lot of stress, even as we try to help the patients that we're caring for. So this presentation is designed to help care for you a little bit, to help you understand why you're feeling perhaps the way you feel and how to make it a little bit better. So I've heard from a lot of you that you don't really know why you feel the way you do, why you can't relax, perhaps your stomach's upset, why you mentally can't concentrate, perhaps you're having strange dreams, you're irritable when you're not usually, crying at random times, exhausted even though you might have gotten more sleep than usual, scared. Your muscles are just so tight, it's hard to even stand up straight. Again, tired, physically, emotionally, psychologically tired. And your chest just tightens up. You know you're not having a heart issue or shortness of breath, but for some reason, if you hear the news, your chest just constricts. And angry. Why am I angry? Why do I just feel sometimes like screaming or crying or laughing and not really knowing which I want or even need to do? Well, the first thing I can tell you is that it's completely normal to feel mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausted right now. These are absolutely not normal times. We are living through a collective trauma, and it does take a toll on the mind and body. There are very, very good reasons why you feel the way you do, however that may be. But even in times of extraordinary stress, you can feel better and you can help your mind and body weather the storm. And we're going to talk a little bit about exactly how you do that. But before we get to feeling better, the first step is helping you understand why it is you're feeling some of the things that I listed before. What exactly is happening inside your mind and body when you are stressed? So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we call the stress response. And many of you may have heard the term fight or flight. And it is this system within the body that creates a number of the symptoms that we've talked about. Actually, a really ingenious little system that our bodies evolved over time. You can think of it as your own emergency response system. It is your mind and body's way of keeping you safe. We often think of stress as a bad thing, but it's really how you react to it and for the length of time that you're reacting to it. The stress response system is really a brilliant system, and it has time and time again helped to keep us alive when a crisis has hit. I'm sure you've all experienced times where the adrenaline starts flowing and you're able to do things or think clearly at moments that you're not even sure that how that happened, but somehow you were able to find the resources within you, either physically, emotionally, or mentally, to get through something very difficult. And that's because our minds and bodies have evolved to do that for us. So let's talk about our brains a little bit, because this is where the emergency response system starts. And you'll see on this slide that I have a really simple picture of the brain structure. And what I really want to call your attention to is the side over here on the right, the reptilian brain, because this is where fight or flight happens. This is the instinctual part of the brain, a very basic part of the brain, one of the areas to evolve first, and most animals have this. It is the part of the brain that doesn't need to check in to the thinking part of the brain. It can act immediately. It doesn't need to ask questions. It doesn't need to think about answers. Instead, once it senses a danger to the body or the mind, it instantly sends out chemicals throughout the entire body, getting the body ready to do whatever action it needs to do to keep you safe. And here we have a little bit of an outline of the body and some of the effects that happen when this emergency response system kicks off. So let's say that it is 10,000 years ago and you were part of a village and you're going out on part of a hunting party. And it's your job to guard the other members of the hunting party. And so as you're doing so, you are scanning the horizon, and it's a very hot day, tall grass around, and all of a sudden you see the grass moving over in the distance. And there's no wind, nothing to explain that movement. But there's a part of your brain, that reptilian instinctual part of your brain, that instantly knows, without you having to puzzle through what could be in that grass, that it very well could be a threat. So before you've had the chance to even comprehend that that grass is moving and it shouldn't move, that perhaps there's a lion there and you need to get ready to fight it off or perhaps run for your life, before you've thought any of that, the reptilian part of your brain has already started going into action. It has started to send out chemicals throughout your body, getting it ready for survival. So one of the first areas that the chemicals go to is to the circulatory system, and your heart starts pounding. We've all been there when we've been in high stress. You can feel your heart pounding. And that is to get the blood going as quickly and as efficiently as possible to all the organs in the body and out to the muscles, where you're going to need a lot of fuel to run if you need to, or perhaps to fight. It's going to go to the lungs and change the pattern of your breathing, and that's so that you're getting as much oxygen into the blood as possible. It's going to go to your digestive system, send chemicals to your stomach and your intestines to slow down. The digestive system actually takes a tremendous amount of energy, and if you're running for your life, you don't want to spend any time digesting lunch, any energy digesting lunch. And so that system slows way down. Other things start to happen. The liver starts to reduce glucose or energy to provide the muscles with what they're going to need. Adrenaline starts coursing through your body. As a result, you're going to feel some very interesting side effects. In addition to that heart pounding and perhaps breathing in a way that feels like you can't quite catch your breath, you also might notice that you get the cold sweats, and it can make you feel a little ill, a little nauseous. In fact, a lot of people, when they're having high anxiety, will say that they feel nauseous, and this is a product of these physiological changes that are happening in your body. Your mouth will go dry, and that's because the saliva is connected to the digestive system, and the digestive system has now slowed way down. Your pupils will dilate. This is to help you see better if you're going to run away from a threat or you're going to fight it off. All of these things help the body to get ready to survive. But it has very real physiological consequences. One, you're going to feel all of these symptoms, but two, it's going to take an awful lot of energy. And what happens when the threat isn't a lion in the grass? When you're not actually going to pick up a spear or run from this lion? What if it's something that you can't get your hands on? What if it is grief or worry, uncertainty, fear, lack of control, sadness, all of the things that we're experiencing right now when we talk about this pandemic, when we talk about how do we care for ourselves, our family, how do we keep our patients safe? What do you do with that stress response when your body is all ready to fight off a threat? And again, there's nothing tangible there. what can happen is that your emergency response system is suddenly in the red. It's suddenly in the critical threat stage. You have sensed that there's a threat. It's in the news. It's everywhere. It's in the conversations you're having. It's in everything that you're reading. And as a result, that triggers the entire stress response system, the entire fight or flight. And so during this pandemic, most of us are spending an awful lot of time in, if not orange or yellow, most certainly yellow, orange or red, most certainly in yellow. But we're spending a lot of time popping up into red, and that really has a detrimental effect on the body over time. So if you look at this graph over on the right, it really charts out for you how the body responds to stress levels over time. And in the middle there is the baseline, and that's what we would consider to be a healthy level of stress, where you can become aware of a threat or something concerning in your environment, you understand what it is, and you take care of it, and then you come down to baseline, and perhaps even lower. Perhaps you're able to relax. So for example, perhaps you're on your way home from work, and it's not during a pandemic, just a normal average day, and you get into a fender bender. Your awareness, your stress is going to spike a bit above baseline. But turns out that the fender bender wasn't too bad. Your insurance is going to take care of it. You get home, you put your feet up, you tell your family the story, or you call your friend, and slowly you find yourself unwinding. So you relax and you come down below the baseline. You get a good night's sleep, and you go back up during the day, ready to handle the next bump that may or may not happen. But when something very unusual is happening, when you are dealing with a situation of prolonged stress, then you don't necessarily return to baseline at any point during the day or at night. And instead, it's much more like the dotted line, going up, 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 until you reach your limit, where there isn't much space left. And this is when there's a real cost to both the mind and body, because you're asking the mind and body to stay at a level of hypervigilance that it wasn't designed to do. And the cost is high. Because it's high, that's why you feel so overwhelmed. You're sad, exhausted, unable to concentrate, sore, sleepless, because that reptilian part of your brain is trying to keep you ready for battle 24 hours a day. And that takes a great deal of energy. That entire system, keeping that engine going, saps everything you've got. So there's not a lot left. So what can you do about it? The way to interrupt this system is to hit pause. What we need to do is to convince the mind, convince that emergency response system, that lizard brain, that you're safe, that it doesn't need to keep sending out these chemical alerts to the body, telling that engine to kick into gear. Pausing means allowing time and space for the mind and body to feel safe, to feel that it's okay to let go, to let down your guard, to breathe, to go back to either a neutral or a relaxation point. Of course, the question is, how do we pause in the middle of a pandemic? Pausing means taking moments, whether they are 10 seconds or 10 hours, to allow the mind and body to let go of being on high alert. Each pause, again, it can only be 10 seconds, can interrupt that stress response. You have the power to do that. It's not a system that just goes unchecked if you don't want it to. So how do you go about doing it? One way to think about this pause of calming the stress response is as lowering the lights. What you want to try to do is to reduce the internal and external noise that is assaulting your mind and body right now. You want to turn down all of the sensory input that's coming at you and give mind and body a chance to rest a little bit without having to think about what it needs to worry about or how to keep you safe, to convince it that you're okay. So there are a few ideas here of how to do that. First is considering a news diet. In today's world, information about COVID-19 is available constantly. It's on the news, social media, radio, email alerts, conversations with family, patients, coworkers. It's really nonstop. And our minds and bodies were not designed for a constant barrage of unrelenting information. Consider limiting yourself to checking the news or your social media feed to certain times in the day and for only a certain amount of time. On days when you consume a lot of information, and we all fall into that, there are times where we feel like we just want to really find out what's going on, and we end up spending a lot of time on news or social media, reading lots of different articles. But when you notice that you've done that, check in with your mind and body. How does it make you feel? Are you perhaps more tired, more anxious? Is it harder to settle down? This is what happens when you've given your mind so much to deal with, particularly things that it perceives as threatening to you. It does have a hard time settling down and letting it go. Another option for a pause is connecting with nature. Our bodies and minds evolved to be in nature. They didn't evolve to be in these buildings we've constructed with artificial light. They evolved to be outside in the fresh air and the sunlight. And they respond to being in the fresh air. They respond to hearing the sights and sounds of the natural world, smelling the grass or the mud of springtime. And studies show that 30 minutes a day outside can actually be as effective as a low-dose antidepressant. And other studies have looked at not even being in nature, but just looking at pictures of nature or looking out a window at nature can produce a calming effect on mind or body. So as you go about your day, even if you are at your desk or running between patients, see if you can take 10 seconds to look at a picture of nature, maybe make it your screensaver or put it on your phone and just give yourself just that brief time to reconnect. Peaceful, mindful activities. Our minds and bodies need downtime. As I said before, we weren't designed for this 24/7 world that we're now living in. We were meant to slow down at the end of the day, get a full night's sleep, do work, absolutely, and then take pauses. So our minds and bodies need those pauses. They need that time to process everything that we ask them to do for us. So if you're on the go all the time and never have a moment to just be and just allow whatever's happened in the day to be processed by your mind, to be released by your body, then it stays with you. So peaceful, mindful, relaxing activities that don't take a lot of brain power can actually provide some of this processing time, whether it's sitting with just a nice warm cup of tea or coffee, or it's doing a jigsaw puzzle, perhaps cooking with family, knitting. There's all kinds of activities that can give you that ability to distract your mind and just slow down. One of those activities, of course, is meditation. And a lot of times people think that meditation is this real intimidating foreign concept that, how in the world am I going to sit there and do nothing for 20 minutes. Well, meditation doesn't have to be about sitting and doing nothing or even blanking out your mind. It's about giving yourself a moment of quiet, a moment to direct your thoughts elsewhere. And it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to blank out your mind. In fact, that's usually impossible. But it can mean learning to redirect your thoughts so they're not always consumed by what's going on in the outside world. And at the end of this presentation, I'll give you some recommendations of places to go to get started on meditation. But meditation can be wonderful for hitting that pause button. And if you do it enough, it can also improve sleep, can lower the blood pressure, it can improve the immune system. It's a great way to take care of yourself. And now we move over to movement. And I have a couple different pictures there showing different ideas, but really the concept behind it is anything that stretches your muscles. And you can even do that at your desk or as you're moving around the building to take care of patients. Perhaps take the stairs when you normally don't, or walk a little bit further when you're already up. Our muscles were designed to move, and particularly when the stress response is turning on and staying on for long periods of time, our muscles are being flooded with all kinds of energy and resources, again, used for fighting or running away from a threat, but you're not actually going to fight or flight. So what are your muscles going to do with all that energy that they've been flooded with? They need somewhere for it to go. And if they aren't given a way to work out all of that pent up energy and stress and strain, that's when you're going to get the muscle aches. That's when you're going to feel that tension and you're going to feel pain, achy joints, all of which can cause more stress. So when you can, get up, have a stretch, move around a little bit. Another way to make sure that you're hitting that pause button is to be aware of what's going on in your own mind, because signals of threat don't just come from the outside world. They also come from within our own heads. And one of the big places they come from is in the form of worry thoughts. Worry thoughts are those what ifs that we all have, particularly when something scary like a pandemic is happening. What if I get sick and make everyone around me sick? What if this goes on forever? What if life is never the same? These are those what if thoughts that really don't have an answer, or not an answer that we can get a hold of, but they're thoughts that increase our anxiety. And then we suddenly, that anxiety turns into beliefs. They turn into, instead of what if this goes on forever, to this is going on forever. And that belief that this will go on forever, or I'm going to make everyone sick, can itself become a trigger for anxiety. It can become a trigger for that emergency response system to kick off and all those chemicals to be flooded through your body, exhausting you. But what you can do is notice that not all of your worry thoughts are anxiety producing necessarily. Some of them are actually action thoughts. They are thoughts about, how can I keep myself safe at this time? Well, there are actions that you can take, actions that we've all been talking about. You can wear a mask when you go out and you know you're going to be around people. You can, if you're going shopping, you can disinfect the cart. You can disinfect your hands. Don't touch your face. Keep it 6 feet apart from other people. All of these are actions that you can reasonably take in response to thoughts in your head about how you keep yourself safe. So when you start to notice worry thoughts swirling around in your brain, take a moment to evaluate them. Are they what if thoughts? And if so, if they are those what ifs that don't have an answer and just lead to a whole circle of anxiety, can you release them? Can you look at them and say, this isn't helping me right now, and there's nothing I can do about how long this pandemic goes on, except for taking the actions that I know that I'm already taking. So I'm going to let that thought go. Keeping that thought and allowing it to dominate your time in your own head is only promoting more anxiety. But what if the thought is an action thought? What if it's asking a question that you can actually answer, that you can take steps to keep yourself safe? Such as, how do I keep myself safe when I go to the grocery store? If that's the thought, then permit yourself to walk through the reasonable steps. Disinfecting the cart, wearing your mask, washing your hands, or making sure that you stay 6 feet away from everyone else. But once you've taken those steps, release the thought, because it's done its job. It's raised the alert and you've answered it. But it's not just thoughts that take space up in our heads and in our bodies. It's also emotions. Make space and time for your emotions. Fear, anger, being irritable, guilt, feeling guilty, sad, all of these are reasonable emotions right now. Acknowledge them. They're normal. Allow these feelings to be, because it's part of being human. When we fight these feelings, or when we interpret them as something that is threatening, it just amplifies the emergency response. It can trigger an emergency response. So while these emotions are natural and they're normal and they are healthy, if you fight with them or you allow them to take up a lot of space inside you, when you make them bigger than they need to be, they can feed our worry thoughts and make our stress response stronger. For example, let's take guilt. Right now, I hear a lot of people feeling guilt that they can't see loved ones right now, perhaps loved ones that are a little vulnerable, that they can't check on them. And as a result, worry thoughts start to turn around that I'm letting them down. I'm not doing a good job in caring for the people that I love. So we can notice that guilt, but then we have to look at it a little bit. And we have to look at the thoughts it leads to, that you're letting people down. Because if we really look at that, we can see that that is false. Taking care of them right now means that you can't go check on them in person, but you can call them. You can make sure they have what they need. And then you can notice that one of the reasons why you may feel something like guilt or sadness is because that you love them and you want to protect them. And in normal times, you would be able to go and you would be able to visit them and you would be able to see with your own eyes that they're okay. You would be able to give them a hug. But this is not normal times. So you are still caring for them, even if it means dropping something at their doorstep and waving from a distance. So if you have those feelings, guilt, sadness, around things that are happening or can't happen right now, notice that. Allow yourself to feel it for a moment and be curious about why it's there. Because maybe it's telling you something about who you are, the love you have for other people, how this isn't easy, but how you are doing the best you can to get through it. I'm going to wrap up today with one of my absolute favorite quotes by Audre Lorde. It is, "I have come to believe that caring for myself is not self-indulgent. Caring for myself is an act of survival." And that's what we're all doing right now. As we're trying to get through this together, we're trying to survive, we're trying to help each other to survive. But in order to survive, we have to care for ourselves. And that means taking time to pause, taking time to slow down, to lower the lights, to let our minds and body rest, to notice that if we are going at full speed all the time, then that emergency response system is going to go full time, and it's going to drain every ounce of energy that we have. So we need to press the pause button. We need to allow the emergency response to just take a break. And we need to take time to replenish all the energy that we're spending. So here are some of the resources that I mentioned before. As I've said in some of the emails that I've sent out, if any of you would like a chance to talk about how you've been doing through all of this, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, Ruth, Chris, or Joe. We are here for you, and we would love to hear from you. Employee assistance is a great way to access counseling and support, and they're available. They would love to hear from you. If you're looking for a community-based counselor, maybe for yourself or someone in your family, try going to psychologytoday.com, and there's a link on there to find a therapist. You can put in your zip code, and you'll come up with a very large selection of therapists in your area. I spoke about meditation before. There are some wonderful meditation apps. Insight Timer is my personal favorite, and I'd be happy to give instructions to anyone who's interested. But a couple others that are very highly regarded are Calm and Headspace. And I spoke a little bit about this before, but meditation, again, it isn't about trying to succeed in emptying your mind. It's about giving your mind a little bit of a breather. And if meditation isn't right for you, sometimes just putting on a little music and closing your eyes can be the perfect thing. So that's it for today. I hope this has been helpful, and take care of yourselves.